Welcome, everyone, to a chat with our latest Amber Grant winner. Today, we're speaking with Danell Eklund, president of 212 Junk Removal Services, who's the Amber Grant winner for July 2021. I'm Marsha Layton Turner, and I'm on the advisory board for Women's Net, makes the Amber Grants. So, Danell, let's start at the beginning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, why you started it, and what kind of services you provide?
Sure. Well, first, before we get into all that, I just want to say much to Women's Net. This is going to be a game changer, not only for my business, but for my family. It's wonderful. And there's not enough words to express the gratitude that I'm feeling. So thank you, Women's Net. And on to 212 Junk Removal Services. This business was originally started when I had lost my husband in an accident. That was where it kind of all began for me. At that point in time, I didn't have any type of formal education. I had a GED. I had very little professional experience in the job field. And I had 3 mouths to feed at that time. And I really didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do. How were we going to survive? How were we going to pay our bills? And we needed to formulate a plan to sustain ourselves. So what I ended up doing was enrolling in school. I took on a job where I worked at a senior living home and took classes on the side. And I worked my way all through a master's degree. So I received my MBA. Wow. And it was hard work. It was fun. We learned a lot as a family. We actually grew so much. It was really chaotic in the beginning, trying to get all the schedules in the flow and everything like that. But once we got it ironed out, it was so neat. We really were like this fine oil machine. So we kind of moved on from that MBA, and I knew that I wanted to start a business. Every business I looked at starting, really, there was so much cost involved in starting these businesses, and it was money I didn't have, and it was money that I certainly didn't want to put myself in the red on. I didn't want to take out loans for it. It was certainly an option, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do. There was so much hesitance there.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
I think it's so interesting that you decided you wanted to start a business. Like, why did you want to do that versus being an employee? What was the thought process there?
Sure. Well, because I was on my own, I was single parenting with 3 kids, one of them being a special needs child. She does have autism. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of meetings, a lot of appointments, a lot of sports events, things like that. And a traditional 9-to-5 job did not fit into that at all. I couldn't be in all of these places at one time. Sure. So it was almost pertinent for me to find something that I could fit into that lifestyle for us, that I could fit into that. And the only thing that I could think of to make that work would be to start my own business, to have my own flow of income, and to dictate my own schedule. Yeah. So I continued to work with the senior living home as I had investigated different options. And again, I had really evaluated different scenarios and found that the businesses that I thought I could start would be taking so much of a financial strain on my family. It just was not possible. Yeah. And one day I had just been sitting there, and I had seen one of these large trucks come by, these large junk trucks that, they say 1-800 got junk on them, or they say Junk King on them. They're really big. And I thought, well, most businesses have a smaller type business associated with them, or, there's, schools have private schools, or there's some offset of that business. And I thought there's got to be something out there with these businesses. And it was more just entertainment for me as I was on my break starting to scroll about junk hauling. And I had stumbled upon the fact that there are independent haulers across the United States, not just a few, but thousands of them across the states. And as I got into it a little bit more, I had realized that the field is dominated by males. It's a male dominated field, saturated. For good reason. It's hard work. It's dirty work. So it's not easy, but it's fun at the same time. So don't get me wrong there. Right. But it is definitely a male dominated field. And, my first reaction to that and to finding all of that information was, is this something I could really do? Physically, is this something I could really do? Well, I did grow up on a farm as a kid, and I threw a lot of hay bales and I picked a lot of rocks out of fields, and I had always been quite a physically strong person. And so I thought, I think that there's a good possibility I could take that on. And what I did realize with more investigation was that a lot of these haulers had started with such minimal equipment. In fact, I had a utility trailer and an SUV with a hitch to hook it up to. And I already had these things in my possession, which meant that I did not have to take out any loans. I didn't need to invest money into that equipment. And I thought, well, all right, I know I'm strong and I'm tenacious. I like to keep going. And so we ended up going for it. And I ended up doing a little bit of market research in my area to see if there was for the business, first of all. And what I ended up doing was placing some ads on Marketplace to see if there was any bites for it initially. And there were quite a few in my area. I'm the only person that does this.
Facebook Marketplace?
Correct. Yes. So I actually used Facebook Marketplace to do a lot of my research on. And there was a lot of bites that happened from Facebook Marketplace. And I realized an interesting trend with that research, and that was that about 76% of the folks that contacted me were women. And it made sense. It made sense that that's the demographic that would probably need these services the most. And so I kind of knew from there.
Why do you say that? Because women are responsible for upkeep, or?
Well, what I'm finding out with this is that yes, women happen to be in charge of the households, and so they are the ones that are predominantly making these calls and getting rid of the stuff. It seems as though I get a lot of calls saying, they just won't let go of it. My husband or my significant other, they just won't let go of it, and so I'm just going to need to get rid of it. And so I'm finding that a lot of the people that I deal with are women, and so making those final calls and cutting those strings is what they're doing, and so that's fun, and I'm always obliged to help that. So I was able to spot market trends easily by doing just that minimal research. And so ultimately I did end up starting to place several free ads on Marketplace and began getting calls. So that is pretty much how the business was born, how 212 Junk Removal was born here in Minnesota. So,
and Danell, how long ago was that you started the business?
The research was started last fall. The business was started this spring.
Yeah. So it's relatively new.
Relatively new and just really charging along. I felt pretty prepared when I started this spring. And the reason for the spring was, Minnesota does experience that Minnesota cool, and we get pretty cold, and people kind of go dormant a little bit during that time. And that was not the time that I wanted to launch the business. Sure. I knew I would have more success launching it in the spring and then going into the following winter, which we're coming upon. Yeah. Being able to sustain the business through that winter, having been through the spring already and the summer and the fall. So
I think it's so amazing that you were able to get started without any investment in new equipment and then using a marketing technique that is essentially free.
Right.
So, from the start financially, I think you really set yourself up really well.
Right.
So let's talk about what's happened in the last few months. What kind of results are you seeing already, and how has the business grown?
Well, I think one of the neatest things that I'm starting to see is repeat customers. In my mind, that's a sign of success. It's repeat business, and that is so neat. I'm really liking that. I'm starting to see a lot of recommendations come through from customers, so that's also in my mind a point of success.
Oh, yeah.
I also gauge success a little bit differently. It's not always monetary to me. We've had a lot of success as far as recycling the business has. So I consider that a success as well.
Yeah.
For example, in July, we recycled over 2 tons of metal, which is really a lot of metal that went into recycling. We recycled about 200 pounds of cardboard. So that was another big win for the month. Donated hundreds of pounds worth of home goods to different organizations. And recycled 55 tires.
Wow.
And tires are actually a big one that we find in Minnesota. They're a big source of illegal dumping. People will throw them in the ditches, they'll throw them in the waterways, and that's a little bit discouraging. They do foster illness here in Minnesota. They are a breeding ground for rodents and insects like mosquitoes, and inside of that is West Nile. So it's always something when we see tires to get those out of the ditches and things like that and donate them to a recycling center where they use them in the making of asphalt or in playground material, things like that. So that's pretty cool. I consider those successes along with, the repeat business and things like that, because making sure those things get to the appropriate areas are such a big deal. That is one of the reasons that I do this is to make sure that we're creating a sustainable future for everybody, including and hopefully my grandchildren one day. Yeah.
Well, what do you think has been the secret to getting this, the repeat business and the referrals? Because clearly you're doing something right if your clients are referring other people. So what's the secret there? What have you been doing right?
It's pretty simple. I like to use the golden rule in my personal life and my professional life. Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. I've always incorporated that into most things that I do, and it's never failed me. It literally has never failed me. Walking into a client, I approach them how I would want to be approached, and I know that sounds so simple and so easy for it to work. It's hard to believe that would work, but that is literally what I do. Literally what I do, and it's never proved wrong. So I'm going to continue with that strategy.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you originally hear about the Amber Grant, and what made you decide to apply?
Well, I had been Googling different sorts of grants, and I hadn't been set on the fact that I was going to apply for any type of grant. I had been able to start my business with a relatively low investment for myself. I did, things like set up a website, business cards, and things like that did cost me money. But outside of that, it was a very low cost startup. And I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to apply for the grant. I knew I wanted to expand the business a little bit. And I had come across the Amber Grant. I thought, this is really such a neat organization. And I held on to the information about a month as I kind of toddled around with it and thought, you know what? I think I will apply, so I had looked at it in June and then in July and at the end of July, I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to apply for it. And I did. I applied for it, and I was really reluctant to apply for it. I had watched the videos, and there are doctors who have received the grants, and there are bakers that have received the grants, and I'm a junk hauler. I get dirty every day. I'm a simple junk hauler, and I thought, there's no way. But you just never know. You never know. And lo and behold, here I am.
Well, we're so glad you did. And I think the fact that the business is, to me, it's a basic service, but it's so needed, especially now.
Absolutely.
As the TV shows Hoarders are on there. We have so much stuff. So to me, it makes perfect sense that there would be great demand for your services.
Huge, yes.
Yeah.
Huge.
So now that you've won, what are your plans for how you're going to use the $10,000 to grow the business? Are there some things that you're planning on investing in right away?
Yes, absolutely. I will be upgrading my equipment. The equipment that I have now requires me to handle the waste multiple times in order to get it to where it's going.
Yeah.
The equipment that I will be able to purchase now will allow me to actually dump the equipment once I get to the waste transfer facility, which is great. It's so much more efficient. Not only that, it's going to be bigger, meaning I can take on more, which is fantastic. You know, it's such a limiting thing when you can only take so much at a time. And so this is huge. This is huge for the business. It's amazing. Another investment will be into additional advertisement, which thus far has been primarily low cost advertisement that I've done. This is going to enable me to put a little bit more money towards advertising and SEO. So search engine optimization, I'll be able to drive more people towards my website. So all around, this money is going to be utilized to just really make that business boom. And I am so excited for it.
Awesome.
Such a great opportunity.
Well, looking ahead even farther, you know, beyond the Amber Grant, what are some future plans that you might have for the company? Are you going to expand geographically? What are you going to do?
Well, yes, absolutely. Ideally, I would love to be nationwide one day. Ideally, I would love to be there. In the next 5 years, though, I will settle for adding to the fleet and adding teams into the fleet. And so having employees, and what that would mean for me is probably a little bit different of a role for the business. It would take me mostly out of the field and put me in the capacity of an office worker, which, you know, a few years down the road after doing this, perhaps I'll be ready for that transition. You know, so I'll be, you know, kind of probably behind a desk at that point. But it'll be more lucrative with multiple teams running at that point. So that's my 5-year plan, is to have at least 3 teams going by that time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, based on your success so far, do you have any advice for aspiring women entrepreneurs? You know, the Women's Net community is full of both aspiring and current women entrepreneurs. So any tips or advice you'd offer them?
Oh, yeah. Don't box yourself into one idea. You know, when you start one place and you have an ideology that you stick to, it doesn't allow for any wiggle room. It doesn't allow for fluidity. And if you allow the opportunity to change and grow, you'd be surprised where it can go. Sometimes it's not where you expect it to be, like a junk hauler, but at the end of the day, you can still be successful and still have something that you can be proud of and that your family can be proud of. And also, don't ever forget to celebrate the good times. Don't ever forget to celebrate the triumphs, and don't hold on to the tribulations when they happen. And because they do happen, they really do, you know, don't get too discouraged. Just keep your head up.
Excellent. Well, Danell, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share your story with everyone.
Thank you.
Congratulations again on being the winner of our July Amber Grant.
Oh, thank you so much. I am just honored.